not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path.
We're here in Beitostøl in Norway at the Norwegian Summer School 2014, learning about the 12 signs of love. The keynote speaker this year is Tom Price, who is the author of a book on the subject and is also a musician. There is a quotation in the Baha'i writings which expresses the theme of this summer school. They whose hearts are warmed by the energizing influence of God's creative love cherish His creatures for His sake and recognize in every human face a sign of His reflected glory. Tom, would you please tell us about your upcoming book and your talks at this summer school?
Yes, the title of the book and the summer school is called The 12 Signs of Love. And really what I wanted to do was define what love actually is in terms of practice. We often talk about love, I love this or I love that, but we don't know what it means. And so I divided love into actions. What can you do to be a loving person? Because sometimes we don't know what love looks like, what it behaves like. And so I divided love into 12 things, and if you can do those things, then you will be a more loving person. So you learn to listen to people, you learn to praise people, you learn to look at the good qualities in people, you learn to try and make people happy, you learn to forgive people when they do things that are not so good to you, and so on. These are the manifestations of love. In other words, love has to have some way of showing itself, and these are the ways you can show love. And in this way we can gradually practice the little things that in total make love. So if you want to be a more loving person to your family, to your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, your workmates, these are things that you can do. Because everyone in the world needs to learn how to love more and more. And this is what the world needs. This is the most important thing everybody needs to learn. So we try to break it down into little manageable actions that each of us can try and do every day. I selected 12 because I like the number 12, and there's 12 months of the year and 12 signs of the zodiac and all kinds of different things. I'm a musician, you know, we have 12 notes that we play. So I thought this was a beautiful way of breaking love down into its small components.
Let your heart burn, let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn, let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path.
His name was Mr. Rich. And Mr. Rich was a very successful man. He had earned a lot of money in his life, and he had many businesses, and he actually ended up being elected the mayor of his city, and he used his influence and power as mayor to acquire lots of businesses, lots of money, and by all accounts, he had a very successful life. Unfortunately, in order to be successful the way he was, he had to step on a few toes, he had to hurt a few people, you know, he had to do things that maybe weren't so nice, but he was a very successful man. There was another man, and he was a friend of Mr. Rich since he was a little child. They went to school together, went to high school together, and his name was Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Lowe was not a successful man. He had a very hard life. He didn't earn a lot of money. he was poor, and he suffered a lot in his life. But he was very kind-hearted, and everybody liked Mr. Low. And so it turned out that late in life, Mr. Low was working as the driver and chauffeur of Mr. Rich. And they were driving down the highway, and Mr. Rich looked at Mr. Low, and he said, you know, you and I were exactly the same when we were children. You know, we had exactly the same thing, and look at you and look at me. He says, you're nothing. You know, you haven't achieved anything in life, and you don't have much money, and here you are, just my driver, and I have all this money and all this wealth and all these businesses. And Mr. Low, he was driving, and he looked at him, and he was thinking about it, and he took his eye off the road, and he crashed into a truck. And the car smashed, and they both were killed immediately. And suddenly, the two of them found themselves sitting in a waiting room. And they were in this waiting room, and they were looking around. There were people walking around, and Mr. Rich looks to Mr. Low and says, look what you did now. You know, you couldn't even keep your eye on the road, and now we're dead. You know, we're sitting here in this waiting room. And the lady walks by, and he says, excuse me, what's going on? She says, well, just bear with us. We're processing a lot of people today, and we'll get to you very soon. So he's waiting there, and he sees there's a door right next to him as he's sitting in the chair, and a man goes into the door, and then immediately comes out of the door, just like that. But when he comes out of the door, he's like in a daze, like this. And so he says to the lady, he says, what is that room that man just came out? He says, oh, that's the life review room. He says, when you go in that room, you review your whole life. And he says, but he was only in there for 1 second. He says, oh, no. To him, he relived his whole life. It was as if he lived his whole life. It seems to you that it was only 1 second. And the man says, you mean I get to live my whole life all over again? She said, yes. Now he was really excited. The lady went away, and he said, oh, this is great. I had a wonderful life. I was so successful, and now I get to live it all over again. Poor you, Mr. Low. You know, you have to live your miserable life again. So then the lady comes to him and says, okay, it's time, Mr. Rich, to go in the room. He says, oh, good, I get to live my life again. She says, well, I guess I should explain to you that there's a slight difference. He says, what is that? He says, well, you don't actually experience your life as if you're you. You experience your life from the point of view of all the other people that you have been with in your whole life. He says, if you have been kind to anybody, you are going to feel your own kindness. You're going to feel exactly, you're going to do that. And if you have been cruel or hurt anybody, you're going to feel your own cruelty. And he started to say, what, are you sure? And then he got scared. And she said, you're not going to live your life again. You're going to live their life in relation to you. And he says, but nobody warned me. Nobody told me about this. And she says, yes, we did. We said, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And you think this is a story that it didn't really happen? You think it didn't really happen? Well, I'll tell you, it's very interesting. This story is based on the research of a doctor named Raymond Moody, who is a famous doctor who studied people who passed away, who died, but were medically revived. Because in the modern world, we have all kinds of equipment that we can bring people back to life. And so he studied hundreds of people in all cultures and backgrounds, and he found that whenever they died and were brought back to life, they experienced certain things, and there were 9 things that were common. And he said it didn't matter if they were in Africa or China or any part of Asia or South America or Europe or North America, they all tended to experience the same thing. And one of the things they experienced, you know, they had various things. One of the things was a life review. And they all said that the life review was exactly like the story I told you. That you didn't relive your life, you relived the life of everybody you came in contact with. And whenever you were loving, you felt your love. And whenever you weren't loving, you felt your lack of love. And so you reviewed your life from the point of view of other people. And he says, I'm reading right from his book, he says, they came away with the feeling that love was the most important thing in life. Now, you say, is this true? Is this research true? Well, in fact, Baha'u'llah also said that when you pass away, you're going to review your life. You're going to have this life review. I'll read it to you. He says, it is clear and evident that all men shall, after their physical death, estimate the worth of their deeds and realize all that their hands have wrought. Okay, he didn't say realize some of the things your hands have wrought. He says when you pass away, you're going to review your life and realize all that your hands have wrought. He says, I swear by the day star that shineth above the horizon of divine power, they that are the followers of the one true God shall, the moment they depart out of this life, experience such joy and gladness as would be impossible to describe, while they that live in error shall be seized with such fear and trembling, and shall be filled with such consternation as nothing can exceed. So he says there's a great difference between what happens. Now, I'm thinking if Baha'u'llah says when I go to the next world, I'm going to review my entire life, then somewhere my life has to be recorded. If it's going to be reviewed, it has to be recorded. Is that right? Did you know that your life is being recorded? You know, everything you do is being recorded. I mean, I know today with YouTube, you know, what you do, it ends up on YouTube. I know this because when I travel, I speak or something, then it always ends up on YouTube. I say I can't even go to the bathroom now without it being on YouTube because everything goes. So it's kind of good because it's teaching me what's going on. But the idea that your whole life is recorded, somewhere it's recorded, is quite an interesting concept. And Baha'u'llah, he says that all your deeds have been recorded. Your whole life is recorded. It's somewhere it's done. Let me read this. He says, think not the deeds ye have committed have been blotted from my sight. By my beauty, all your doings hath my pen graven upon open characters, upon tablets of chrysolite. He says, all your doings, not some of your doings, all your doings, they have been graven with open characters. I mean, it's written clearly on a tablets of chrysolite. Chrysolite is a hard stone that never wears away. It never disappears. So where is this tablet of chrysolite that has all your doings? Do you like that idea? Do you like the idea? In other words, they're keeping score of every single thing you did in life. That's what's going on. Every single thing you do in life is recorded on tablets that will never be erased. And when you go into that door in the next world, you're going to have to read the whole thing. Do you like that idea? That's what Baha'u'llah says. So, Baha'u'llah explains that because you're going to have this life review, you need to do the review every single day. This is the key. This is why dailiness is the essential component to becoming loving. He says, bring thyself to account each day, ere thou art summoned to a reckoning, for death unheralded shall come upon thee, and thou shalt be called to give account for thy deeds. So he's saying you're going to have to have a life review, so you better do the review every single day. In other words, have a daily review so that you're ready. Now, accounting, what is accounting? When you account, what do? You look at all the positive and the negative and you balance it out. How many of you only do your accounting once in a year when you have the taxes? And how many of you do your accounting maybe regularly? It's better to do it regularly, isn't that right? Because then if you do it regularly, it can help you to modify your spending or income. And you can see, whereas if you wait till the end of the year and you do it, you say, oh my God, if I'd known that 6 months ago, I wouldn't have bought that, ridiculous thing or something. Isn't that right? In the same way, by keeping regular accounting, what's going on now? Oh, he brought me a watch. See, our chairman is very angry at me because I don't do things. I can't read that watch.
Does anybody have a clear watch back it up on your
Yeah, see, the chairman gets very upset if I go even 1 minute over time. So he's giving me a watch.
This one's a little easier to read, isn't it?
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. And I remember one time I put the watch the wrong way on the table, and I thought I had 4 more hours. Okay. So, Baha'u'llah says, bring yourself to account every single day, because ultimately you're going to have to do the accounting. So do your accounting every single day. Is there anyone here that plays golf? Anyone plays golf? Just 1, 2, 3 people? Now, when you play golf, you actually score each hole as you do the hole. Isn't that right? You score every hole as you do the hole. If you didn't score any holes, would you play golf the same way? You wouldn't play, would you? Because if you're not keeping score, who cares? But the act of keeping score is only a very small thing. It doesn't take very much time, does it? Just write it down. But that act of taking score has a great effect on the way you play. Isn't that right? So it's a small amount of time, but it has a great amount of effect on the way you play. And of course, it doesn't matter if you lose a hole or gain a hole if it's just one. But the whole thing is added up, and this is what's going on in life. So Abdu'l-Baha said, it's very simple in life. He said, never compare yourself to anybody else. Never compare yourself to anybody else. Never look at somebody and say, oh, they are so loving, they are so spiritual, I can never be like them. And also, never look at someone and say, they are so horrible and so rotten and so disgusting, I'm so much better than that person. Never do either one of those two things. The only thing you should compare yourself to is to yourself yesterday. Just compare yourself to yourself yesterday. Not even yourself 10 years ago or where you want to go. Just, how was I yesterday? Abdu'l-Baha said, every morning upon awakening, compare yourself to yourself yesterday. And if you are a little more loving, a little more spiritual, a little closer to God, then thank God for it and ask for an increase. And he says, if you're not, he says, then ask God for forgiveness. Either way, you're fine. You know, you have something to do in either case. And then he says, just try to be better tomorrow than you were today. So the whole goal in life is to beat yesterday. That's all. Just become better than you were yesterday. It does not matter how bad you were yesterday as long as you're a little better today. You can look at two people and one person you think they're so spiritual and wonderful, but if they're no better than they were a year ago, they're not as good as someone who you think is worse, but they're better than they were yesterday. Because motion is the most important thing. The goal in life is to beat yesterday. If you murdered 10 people yesterday, then try to murder 9 people today. Okay? Now, you're laughing, but you know, in 10 days you wouldn't kill anybody. And so that would be good. And besides, there are people who are doing things like murder and horrible. There has to be a pathway. There has to be a means whereby all people can improve. And this is the means. It's daily looking at this. So every one of these attributes that I'm talking about, I don't want you to nod your head and say, oh, that's really good. I want you to say, no, I'm going to make that part of my daily life review and see if I can come a little closer to that. When I was in the United States, somebody said to me something after a talk that made me very upset. It hurt me very much. And I hope none of you come and say it to me at the end of the school. They came up to me and they said, thank you for your talk. It gave me something to think about. And it made me very upset. I was very sad about that. If they had come up to me and said, thank you for your talk, it gave me something to do, then I would have felt happy. Then I'll happy. Because if I give you something to think about, what's the point? What is the point? Believing in something is meaningless unless it results in action. There are many people that I call professional believers. You know, they believe something, and they feel so good about the fact that they believe it. They'll go to a meeting, they'll listen to someone speak, and they nod their head. And in the act of believing and nodding their head, they feel good about themselves. Because I believe something, I feel so good about myself. It's nothing. It's meaningless. Unless you translate that belief into action, the belief, it's actually worse. I prefer that you didn't believe in it if you're not going to practice it. And this is what Abdu'l-Baha said is the essence of true religion. It's a religion of practice. So everything I say about the 12 signs of love is not something that you believe as some great general principle. It's something that you're going to apply to your daily review. And we're going to talk over and over again. Now, I told you the first sign of love is to change your attitude towards unity and to consider that unity is the most important thing. When you come together in consultation, your goal should be to achieve unity. Your goal should be to achieve love and harmony amongst the members. We come and have a meeting, and we think that our goal is to find the right way, and usually that's our way. In other words, my goal in this meeting is to achieve what I think is right. That's my purpose. And so I make that the highest end. And if it causes disunity, that's fine, because being right is more important than unity. We have to change our priorities. Abdu'l-Baha says this. He says, if 5 people meet together to seek for truth, They must begin by cutting themselves free from all their own special conditions and renouncing all preconceived ideas. In order to find truth, we must give up our prejudices, our own small, trivial notions. An open, receptive mind is essential. If our chalice is full of self, there is no room in it for the water of life. And then he says, something is the greatest of all obstacles in the path of truth, path towards unity. I want to read this. He says blank, and I'm leaving it blank on purpose because I want you to think what he's saying. Blank, he says, is the greatest of all obstacles in the path towards unity. Something is the greatest obstacle. It's the one that stops unity more than anything else. Something. What do you think that is? Who? Self. You think self is the greatest obstacle. Who has another guess?
Pride.
Pride. Who thinks it's pride? That pride is the greatest obstacle. The thing that most blocks unity is pride, is self. Who has another guess? Backbiting. Backbiting is the greatest obstacle that, to unity. Who has another guess? Yes. I'm right, you're wrong. Who has another guess? Criticism. Yes. That's probably. Who has another guess? Yes.
Hate.
I'm sorry? Hate is the greatest obstacle to unity. Well, of course, yeah. It would. Yes. What do you think it is? Untruthfulness is the greatest obstacle. Who's got some other guesses?
Fear. Fear.
Yes.
Fear.
Fear. Boy, that's good too. These are all really good things. They're all obstacles to unity. Wouldn't you agree? Let me read you what Adabaha said. He said, the fact that we imagine ourselves to be right and everybody else wrong is the greatest of all obstacles in the path towards unity. One person. The fact that we imagine ourselves to be right. The reason is that when we think we're right, we think that is more important than unity. We put it at a higher level. Or we think that it is truth. And we think truth is more important than unity. You know, truth is not as important as unity. Truth can always be found as long as there's unity. But if there's disunity, there's death, and the truth will never be found. Truth is not as important as unity. Being right is not as important as unity. Now, recently there was a study in the United States that was quite surprising. It was a study they did amongst Americans who were intelligent. Now, the reason it was surprising is not because there are intelligent Americans, although that is a little surprising to some people, but it was surprising because what they did was they took intelligent Americans and they asked them questions on many subjects of different areas, and then they asked them, after they answered the question, how sure were they of their answer? How certain were they? Were they 10% certain of their answer? Were they 20%? Were they 50% certain? Were they 100% certain of their answer? They would rate that. Then they took all of the answers that they were 100% certain of, and they found that they were wrong 40% of the time. That not of the things they weren't sure, but the things that they were absolutely sure about, they were wrong 40%. Nearly half the time they were wrong. Now, this is not surprising. I'll ask you a question here. How many of you have been right about every single thing in your entire life? Put your hand down. Been right about everything in their life? Okay. How many of you then have found out every now and then that you were wrong? Something you thought before was right, you were wrong. How many of you found that? Okay. So here's the point. Here's the point. If I listen to somebody and they tell me something, and then they don't do it, and then they tell me they don't do it, after a while I don't trust them. For example, if someone says, give me 200 euros and I'll pay you back, and then they don't pay me back. So then a year later they say, give me 500 euros and I'll pay you back, and they don't pay you back. After a while, if they ask you, and they'll pay you back, do you believe them anymore? No, you don't. Now, you have inside you a little man or a little woman. You have inside you a little man or a little woman that tells you something is right. Isn't that right? And you keep believing that little man. Is that right? Over and over again you believe that little man, and yet you've just admitted by raising your hand that little man is not always right. But here's the point. When you think something is right at the time of thinking it's right, do you think it's right? Come on, admit the truth. When you think something is right at the moment of thinking it, at that point, do you think it's right? You do. Of course, you wouldn't otherwise. You'd be a fool, wouldn't you? So at the moment of thinking it, you think it's right, but you know from experience, because you all raised your hand, that it's not always going to be right. So basically, a little man says this is right, and we go through life believing that little man, and maybe it takes you till 50 or 60 years old to say, hold on, why do I keep believing that stupid little man? Because we allow that little man to cause disunity. We trust him more, and then it turns he wasn't right. So the point is that the first thing you have to do, according to Abdu'l-Baha, is not make being right more important than being united. You could be right, you could be right, but is unity more important? Absolutely. If you think of unity as being life, and disunity as being death, you would never want to cause death. That's why sometimes when people push being right, in a meeting, they push it really hard, this is the right thing, I say, yes, you are right, you are dead right. Because dead right is the phrase. It means you're dead right, you're so right, you're causing death. Abdu'l-Baha says this, he says, it is my hope that the friends and the maidservants become united on all subjects and not disagree at all. If they disagree upon a subject, even though it be wrong, it is better than to disagree and be in the right. For this difference will produce the demolition of the divine foundation. See, it's better to be wrong, but to be united, than it is to be right and disunited, because the disunity would cause the demolition of the whole foundation. He says, though one of the parties may be in the right and they disagree, that will be the cause of 1,000 wrongs. But if they agree and both parties are in the wrong, as it is in unity, the truth will be revealed and the wrong made right. Now, I as an American find this very hard, because we believe that we fight for what we think is right. Fight, 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 it doesn't matter how much disunity we have. In fact, politics in the United States and politics in most parts of the world are based upon the principle that fighting for what is right is more important than unity. In fact, cause disunity if you want, because that's more important. This is so different. And I remember reading a passage about Baha'u'llah during the time, his lifetime, and in Persia there were some believers that were arguing and fighting over his station. There were big disputes. Some thought he was this station and some thought it was that station. And once again, I know it seems unusual that Persians would fight and argue. I mean, who's ever heard of that? But this happened in the old days, okay? They were fighting and arguing. They don't do that today, but they were doing that. So they were arguing and fighting, and finally they sent a message to Baha'u'llah. And they said, this side believes this, and this side believes that. Who's right? And Baha'u'llah wrote back, and he said, if you agree, you're both right. And if you disagree, you're both wrong. And when I first read that, I was really mad. As an American, it made absolutely no sense. I said, come on, Baha'u'llah, take a stand. Who's right? Somebody's got to be right, somebody's got to be wrong. Who's right? And it took me a long time until finally it dawned upon me, this is a more profound truth than I'd ever realized, that being united is right and being disunited is wrong. And so we have to change our whole value system. Now, this means that we have to completely change our priorities. We have to say that any time we have a situation, we have to preserve our unity. We have to preserve our love. We have to preserve our friendship. If we keep that, that is more important. It's more important than what we do tonight or where the assembly has the meeting or what cookies you eat at feast, if you're arguing about that, or what restaurant we go out to with our husband and wife, or who does the dishes, or whatever causes disunity. How many things cause disunity? Have you ever had a situation that was disuniting with your workmates, or your friends, or your husband, or your wife, or your children? Have you ever had something disunifying? All you have to do is think about that, and you will realize that there was something you made more important than unity. Some attachment to your pride, to your opinion, to your wants, to your needs, to your wealth, to your power. Something was obviously more important than unity, and you allowed that thing to cause disunity. Would you agree? And all we have to do is say unity is the most important thing, just like life is the most important thing. And then suddenly we will have this principle that unity is the most important thing. With that general attitude, you will then be able to practice the 12 signs of love, or the other 11. Abdu'l-Baha said this. He said, "O ye believers in God, the text of the divine book is this: if two souls quarrel and contend about a question of the divine questions, differing and disputing, both are wrong." So, if any two Baha'is, he says, are arguing, who's right and who's wrong? They're both wrong. You can never argue and be right. As long as you're arguing with someone, you're wrong, because arguing is wrong. He says, the wisdom of this incontrovertible law of God is this, that between two souls from amongst the believers of God, no contention and dispute might arise, that they may speak with each other with infinite amity and love. Now, he says what you should do if an argument happens, whenever an argument happens. And what do you think that is? Who can tell me what Abdu'l-Baha says to do whenever there's an argument? Who wants to guess? Yes? Oh, yes. He actually did say that in another passage. He said, in this one, he says something different. Even simpler than that, if there's an argument. Who wants to guess? He says, should there appear the least trace of controversy, they must remain silent, and both parties must continue their discussion no longer. You see that? So it's very simple. Anytime you're arguing with somebody, just say, I got to stop this. We can't talk about this. We can talk about other things, but we can't talk about this because we're arguing. Because we're killing each other. We're killing each other. You understand that? So it's very simple. How many of you have had arguments that go on and on and on? How many of you have had arguments that have gone on for weeks? How many of you have had arguments that have gone for years? How many of you have arguments that have gone on for 20 or 30 years with some member of your family? I see some hands going up. Yes, it's true. Isn't that right? You must just stop those. There are many things that we have to stop doing that cause disunity. Let me tell you a few things that immediately cause disunity. One is hurting someone's feelings. That immediately causes disunity. Have you ever had your feelings hurt? Did you feel united with those people? It immediately hurts someone's feelings. Here's another thing that causes disunity. Mentioning other people's faults or shortcomings. Just mention them. There's a phrase in English that actually refers to something that doesn't exist. There's a phrase we have in English, but it doesn't exist. And the phrase is constructive criticism. I don't know if you ever heard, do you have that phrase in your language? Constructive criticism? It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as constructive criticism. It doesn't work. Just try it. It will not work. All criticism is destructive. You should not criticize people. Here's something else that usually causes disunity. It doesn't help. It's giving advice. Giving advice to people usually doesn't help. Anytime you give advice to other people, it's always interpreted as being criticism of what they're doing. In other words, look after yourself. Don't worry about other people. It's not really your job to help other people. So often we think we're helping somebody by pointing out their faults to them. We think, oh, I'm going to be kind and helpful to them, so I'm going to tell them what's wrong with them and give them advice. Does it ever work? No, because what that person needs is unity and love. They don't need advice. They don't need their things pointed out. Here's another thing that you need to erase from your vocabulary. You just need to erase it. Just take it out. It's the words, I told you so. I told you so. That's a very, very selfish thing to say. When somebody arrives at a truth, when they realize something is true, you should be rejoicing in the fact that they've arrived at that truth. And you should say, that is so right, and be happy that they've arrived at the truth. But to say, I told you so is so selfish. It's like, oh, who cares? I already arrived at the truth before you did. So instead of rejoicing in the truth, you're focusing on yourself and how clever you were that you knew it before. Isn't that right? You should never do that. It just completely ruins the moment. You just had them arrive at a truth, and you spoiled it. In other words, you were given a corner kick that you could kick right in the goal, and instead you didn't kick it through the goal. It's so easy to just rejoice when something is right. These are some of the ways that you can cause disunity. Now, if you look at every one of the 12 signs of love that we're going to look at now, every one of them, you will find that every one of them is unifying. It causes unity, and it achieves this highest end. And if you don't do them, you will find that you're causing disunity. And your first goal in life is you say, I want to get through today without having a single disuniting interaction with anybody. There's not one person I'm going to see today I'm going to be disunited. And in every case, in every person I see, I am going to try and have unity with them. I'm going to do one of these 12 signs of love, or maybe several of them. So I want to move on immediately to the second sign of love. We have 10 days, so we have 10 sessions. We're already in the second, so I'm going to have to do about 2 per day. So we're going to come to the second sign of love, and that is acceptance and tolerance. Acceptance and tolerance. We need to learn to accept people and tolerate them no matter what they do, even if they do rotten, horrible, terrible things to us. Because quite often we're disunited with people because we're not happy with what they do. A wife is not happy because the husband doesn't do certain things. The husband is not happy because the wife doesn't behave or do certain things. The parents are not happy with the children. In other words, we don't tolerate and accept people, and that means that we only love them conditionally. Only if they'll act this way or do this way will we love them. Okay, that's not true love. Acceptance and tolerance of the person, whoever they are and whatever they do, is the first important principle. But I told you that it was hard to do that unless you learn acceptance and tolerance in a certain way. Can anyone guess how we learn acceptance and tolerance? And actually, someone told it to me, how you learn all signs of love. The answer is, you learn all signs of love first by your relationship with God. First by your relationship with God. In other words, we learn love by His relationship with us and our relationship to Him. So when I mentioned praise, for example, I said you learn to praise your husband or your wife or your children or your workmates because you learn that you have to praise God every day, and so you do it this way. Well, it so happens that with acceptance and tolerance, we cannot learn to accept and tolerate other people until we learn to accept and tolerate God. And that means we have to learn to accept our life. We have to learn to love and be content at all times in our life. We are told over and over again in the Baha'i writings that contentment and happiness with our life is the source of all good. It's the source of all glory. For example, Baha'u'llah says, the source of all good is trust in God, submission unto His command, and contentment with His holy will and pleasure. In another passage, he says, the source of all glory is acceptance of whatsoever the Lord hath bestowed, and contentment with that which the Lord hath ordained. Now, until you reach the stage where you say, my life is perfect. My life is absolutely perfect. It has always been perfect. Every day of my life is perfect. How many of you think your life is perfect? Only 3, 4, 5, 6? Okay. So, obviously the rest of you would prefer a different life. Okay? Until you reach the stage where you say, my life is exactly perfect. That is exactly what I need. And every person that God places in front of me today, whoever He puts in front of me, that was given to me by God because it's exactly what I need. Because when you go to the next world, you will realize that God gave you exactly the life He gave you for you to achieve and score your goals. You don't need any other life. He gave it to you. Now you may say, well, hold on. You know, I have a terrible life, a disgusting life. But you're not looking at it from the point of view of the opportunities that life has given you. So until such time as you say, every single moment of my life is perfect, if I had a chance to change even one day or minute of my life, I won't change it. Because my life is perfect. Then you arrive at the stage of acceptance and tolerance in God. Now, Baha'u'llah says that you achieve all the good things in life only when you are content with whatever happens to you. He says, all the virtues pertaining unto God are, and then he lists them, and he says they are forbearance, resignation to whatever the Almighty hath decreed, contentment with the things his will has provided, patience, nay, thankfulness in the midst of tribulation. Now, when he says patience, nay, thankfulness in the midst of tribulation, that's an interesting concept. Because what is tribulation? Tribulation is a bad thing, wouldn't you agree? Not just bad, but really bad. Wouldn't you agree? Okay. Now, I can understand being patient in tribulation. But Baha'u'llah, come on. Do you want me to be thankful? You know, thankful? How many of you are thankful in tribulation? It was very interesting because I was reading a passage in Baha'u'llah's writings in the Epistle of Son of the Wolf, and Baha'u'llah said that the true believer should be thankful in adversity. He says thankful in adversity. Now, adversity is a bad thing. Now, if Baha'u'llah said be accepting in adversity, or begrudgingly accepting in adversity, would that be okay? But really, do I have to be thankful? How many of you are thankful in adversity? When something really bad happens to you, you're thankful. Anybody? Just one or two? And that's how you're supposed to be. There was another passage I read in the Hidden Words, and I was very upset. Baha'u'llah said, the true lover yearneth for tribulation. He said, the true lover yearneth for tribulation is even worse, you know. Tribulation is like horrible things. Okay. Now, he says yearneth, and I'm saying, Baha'u'llah, what do you mean yearneth? Are you sure that's the right word? What things do you yearn for? Or like when you wake up in the morning, do you yearn for a good cup of coffee maybe? Or is that right? Or when you're tired, do you yearn for some rest or relax? Is that right? Those are things you yearn for, is that right? Do you ever come home from a hard day's work and say, I really yearn for some tribulation? Okay? Do you ever yearn for tribulation? And yet Baha'u'llah says, the true lover yearneth for tribulation. Why is that? Because there's something going on here in the spiritual realm, some kind of spiritual law that we don't understand. In the 7 valleys, he says that to get through each of the valleys, you have to ride a horse. He calls it a steed. Do you know that? And every valley has its own steed. And you can't get through the valley if you don't have the steed. Like you can't get through unless you have the horse. What is the steed of the valley of love? To get to love, what is the steed of the valley of love? Who could? No, patience is the steed of the valley of search. What is the steed of the valley of love? Pain. Pain is the steed of the valley of love. Okay, so to achieve love, you have to ride the horse of pain. In other words, you need pain. Pain is the horse that will get you through life. Did you know that? Do you like that? Thanks a lot, Baha'u'llah. To achieve love, I have to ride the valley, through the valley I have to ride through pain. So this is very interesting because Baha'u'llah says that if you want to prove you love him, you want to prove you love God, actually. He said, if you want to prove you love God, the only way to prove it is to show happiness and contentment in adversity. He says, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is patience under my trials and fortitude under my decrees. My decree. In other words, that's the sign of love. So basically what he's saying is, you're not proving you love me if I just give you all good things. If God gave you everything good and you loved God, do we really know if you love him or not? Probably not, because if he didn't give you those things, would you still love him? But if he gives you hard things, difficult things, and you still love him, he says that's the sign of love. Now I know you love me, Koresh, because I'm going to beat you and I'm going to whip you and I'm going to do bad things, and you still love me. Okay, now I know you love me. You see? And this is true of people. This is true of people. You can only prove you love a person if you love them after they do a horrible, rotten, disgusting thing to you. And then you still love them. Then that's the sign of love. Anybody can love the lovable. It's easy to love the lovable. Big deal. So what? They're perfect in every way. You know, I love Abdu'l-Baha. Okay, so what? You know, Abdu'l-Baha was perfect. But to love your husband, to love your wife, to love your children, to love your boss, you know, to love, okay, and to love them in spite of whatever they do, and to accept and tolerate that with joy and radiance, that is the sign of love. So this is a very important principle. We first learn to be content and happy with our life, to be content and happy with God, because everything God does to us is a gift. In our prayers, we say, God, you are the bountiful. God, you are the giver. God, you are the sufficing. Is that right? So we say God is the giver and He's bountiful, and then we live our life and we act as if He didn't give us anything. So was He bountiful or not? No, He was bountiful. Whatever He gave you was exactly a bounty. I know a certain Baha'i, she's about 18 or 19, she's in high school, and she said that she went to school and there was a word in the class and she thought it meant a certain thing. The word was bounty. And she said she thought the word bounty meant a calamity or a disaster. You know, it's funny because only two groups of people, pirates and Baha'is, ever use the word bounty. You know, nobody else uses that word because it's an old word, but pirates use it and Baha'is use it. And she was reading this thing in class, and she thought the word bounty meant a disaster. And the teacher said, no, it doesn't mean a disaster. It means a gift or a good thing. She said, I think it means a disaster. And they said, why? And she said, well, my father's a Baha'i, and anytime anything bad happens, my father always says, it's a bounty. So she actually grew up thinking bounty meant something bad because of this concept. But it really shows you how different it is. In our life, we view that everything that happens to us in life is a gift from God. It's a corner kick that we can put through the goal.
That's a penalty.
It's a penalty kick. Okay. Oh, okay. Because the penalty. In other world, we will go to the next world and say, oh, we were given that opportunity to show love. And instead, we got upset and cried like a little baby and didn't accept it. And so we lost the opportunity. It's an opportunity to score a goal. So this is very important. We have to understand that our life is exactly what we need. Today, your life is exactly what you need. Whoever you meet at the lunch table today is exactly who you need to meet, because you have the opportunity to score a goal by showing love to them. Abdu'l-Baha was asked a question when he arrived in London, and the question was this: will you tell us how you felt while in prison and how you regard your freedom? We are grateful that you are free. And Abdu'l-Baha said, thank you, he said graciously, and then continued. He said, freedom is not a matter of place, it is a condition. I was thankful for the prison, and the lack of liberty was very pleasing to me, for those days were passed in the path of service, under the utmost difficulties and trials, bearing fruits and results. Unless one accepts dire vicissitudes, he will not attain. A dire vicissitude, dire means really, really, really horrible, really terrible. Vicissitude is a terrible problem. He says, unless one accepts them, one will not attain. You have to learn to accept them. To me, prison is freedom, troubles rest me, death is life, and to be abased is honor. Therefore, I was happy all that time in prison. When one is released from the prison of self, that is indeed release, for that is the greatest prison. When this release takes place, then one cannot be outwardly imprisoned. The confirmations of the Spirit come to that man or woman who accepts his life with radiant acquiescence. Now, that last sentence is very interesting because he says there's a way that you can receive confirmations of the Spirit of God. And of course, how many of you would like to receive confirmations from the Spirit? We all want that. Okay, of course we want that. He says they come to certain people. Those people receive confirmation of the Spirit if they accept their life with radiant acquiescence. Acquiescence means to completely give in, to completely resign and accept. That's what But radiant means that you do it happily and joyfully. You don't just, okay, I'll take it. In other words, you absolutely receive it with joy. He says, if you want to receive confirmations from the Holy Spirit, you can receive it as soon as you accept your life with radiant acquiescence. So, the first thing you have to acknowledge is that my life is perfect, that your life is perfect. You will realize this when you go to the next world. And you have to realize that every moment of your life is a gift from God to perform an act of love. God is giving you everything you need to learn to perform an act of love that you will be able to realize its value in the next world. God has placed you exactly where you need to be. I want to ask a question again. I asked before and I got about 3 hands raised. How many of you feel your life is perfect? I still only, I got 5, 6, 7. Okay. Oh, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, are you starting to feel that your life is perfect? Okay. How many of you, then, I want to ask you a question here. Once again, show of hands. How many of you feel that God is generous? Oh, more hands. How many of you feel that God is bountiful? Everybody. How many of you feel that God is the giver? How many of you feel that God is the all-sufficing? Sufficing means that everything He gives you is all you need. How many think He's all-sufficing? Well, you better, because it's in the prayers. Isn't that right? How many? Okay. Now, how many of you feel that God has given you your life? Okay. Now let's ask again. How many of you feel your life is perfect? I'm just asking you a question. Because it doesn't make any sense. Why would God be the bountiful, the giving, and everything, and then He gives you a life and you don't think it's good? That means that there's a lack of belief that He's giving you something perfect, and you don't realize that whatever He gave you is exactly what you need. Your goal is only to see, why did He give me that, so that I can score a goal in life. Once you get it right with God, then you can begin to get it right with other people. Okay, so how many of you think everybody is perfect? Three? 4? Okay, let me put it another way. How many of you, when you look at other people, you only see that they're perfect? How many people have something good in them? Okay, if you only saw that, would they then be perfect? Because you just didn't see anything else? This is the key. The key to life is learning that God can do no wrong. God can do nothing wrong. Whatever God does to me tomorrow, the most thing that I think is most horrible, that's the right thing. And once you have that attitude towards everybody else, my wife can do nothing wrong, my husband can do nothing wrong, my children can do nothing wrong, my workplace can do nothing wrong, it can't hurt me at all, then you will do that. You should never get mad at God. Do you ever get mad at God? Admit the truth. Have you ever gotten a little mad? Have you? Yeah, of course, you get mad. But we shouldn't get mad at God. We shouldn't swear or curse God or anything like that. But we also should never get mad at other people. Never get, because anger is inappropriate. If you tried to walk from here to Oslo, how far is it to Oslo from here? Oh, okay, so how long would it take to walk there?
Some days.
No. Some days? Okay, so say you're walking from here to Oslo, and you're walking for 2 days, and you still have 5 days to go. If you saw somebody on the road walking towards Oslo, would you be mad that they weren't in Oslo? Would you be mad? No, doesn't matter, because you're walking to Oslo, they're walking to Oslo. Is that right? That's all that we're doing. We're all walking on a path. We shouldn't be mad. Excuse me for a moment. We shouldn't be mad that they're not there, because we're not there. Isn't that right? I remember when I was in Los Angeles not too long ago. Los Angeles is a very big city. At peak hour, just like early in the morning and around 5 o'clock, the traffic is so bad that everybody gets mad at everybody. It's ridiculous. There's so much traffic, and everyone's honking their horns, and everyone's angry, and everyone's mad. So I was walking at 5 o'clock, and I had to cross a big street. It was Wilshire Boulevard. And I pushed the lights, and the cars were coming, and everyone was honking, honking, honking. And as I pushed the button to cross, there was a red light, and the car wanted to come across the intersection, but another car came around the red light to come in. You know, even though they shouldn't have done it, it was a red light. You know how they do that? Because they didn't want to wait another 5 minutes for the next light. So they came around even though it was a red light. This other car saw that car coming around, and they honked their horn, And one car had a man with a truck in it, and the other one was a woman. And so the man with a truck in it, he made a motion with his hand, a certain finger motion. You understand? Do you do that in this country? Because if you're in your car, they can't hear you, so you have to speak with your hands. So he makes this finger thing to the lady. And the lady immediately makes the finger thing back to him, like that. So I'm sitting right here, I can't walk, and the finger there, finger there. So the man goes harder with the finger, like louder, because he did it hard. So the lady goes really like that to him, like that. And then they start doing two hands, and they're fingering, and they're both fingering back and forth. It's like this big finger fight right in front. And there's all these people were we couldn't walk across because the two finger fighting was going on. And it was going on and on and on. And then finally the man opened his car door to get out, and we got scared, that there was going to be even more of a fight. And then they got in the car and they drove off. And I thought about this. I said, this is very strange. First of all, they both wanted exactly the same thing. They both wanted to get somewhere, and they were running late, to get home or get to a business. So they surely should have both understood that they were exactly on the same road. Isn't that right? Secondly, the time that the lady took to get in front of the man probably delayed him by 15 seconds. Just one car. Is that right? The finger fight took 5 minutes. You see? So if their goal was to save time and to get home quicker, they wasted time more by doing that. And so I realized that we have to understand that sometimes we are all in the same boat. We're all walking on the road to Oslo or whatever like that, and that we have to realize that it is love that is the most important thing that gets us there, and not all this futile fighting. What's the point really of fighting in traffic? Does you ever get mad in traffic? Do they get mad in this country? You do? You get mad in traffic? Why? Yeah, why do you get mad in traffic? But they're trying to get somewhere themselves. How do you really know if they're going fast past you or something like that? Maybe they have to get to the doctor, or maybe the woman's going to have a baby. How do you really know? In other words, why are we so concerned about other people? Shoghi Effendi said that life is like plowing a field. That when you plow a field, has any of you ever actually held a plow? Raise your hand if you ever held a plow. Yes. Have you ever held one behind a horse? You have? Good. So you know that when you're holding a plow behind a horse, if the plow hits a rock or some heavier dirt, it goes hard, and you really have to fight. Isn't that right? Then you have to keep your eye on it. So Shoghi Effendi said, plowing a field, he said, life is like plowing a field. That it requires all of our concentration to keep that plow straight. If we're trying to keep the plow straight and we look to see if somebody else is plowing straight, or if they're going off, as soon as we look at them, our plow goes off. And that's what we're doing every time in life. We worry about anybody else. It just causes us to go off on the wrong way. We need to keep our attitude on the fact that love and unity is the most important thing, and that everybody else is only just trying to get there at the same way. So we have to accept and tolerate everybody. Now this is a very simple thing to do. Parents need to learn to accept and tolerate their children. And many times parents don't accept their children, they don't tolerate their children, they don't allow them to be what they want to be. We need to not be so concerned about the faults of other people, so much so that it causes disunity or hate. And once we do that, we will realize that everything they have given us in life, that God has given us, God has placed everyone in our trust. He's given us so that we can learn to accept and tolerate and love them. And as soon as we arrive at that belief that we accept and tolerate them no matter what they are, even if they're criminals or murderers or thieves or whatever they do, we accept and tolerate them on an individual basis. Of course, that doesn't mean that the community and governments don't, prosecute criminals. That's a different question. I'm talking about your attitude towards people that you have a relationship with. As soon as we accept them, we can move straight on to the third sign of love. And the third sign of love is praise and gratitude. Once you get to the stage where you love somebody, you have to be able to praise them. You have to be able to praise them. And you have to be able to tell them you're grateful for them. Now, how much time do I have? I have 15 minutes? We're not going to finish, but let's begin by practicing this one today. Because I told you that you have to praise God every single day. Is that right? Does God need it? Does God need to know? Does God really care if you praise Him or not? Does it make Him any better or worse? No. Does it raise His self-esteem or something like that? No. You need to praise God every day, because that creates a bond of understanding and love between you and God. Now, if we need to praise God every day, we certainly need to praise other people. Now, you cannot love someone if you cannot praise them. And if you have a relationship with someone who it's not going particularly well, this is the first way you can correct that relationship. You can say, right now I'm going to try and praise that person to their face. I'm going to praise them. I'm going to say something good. In order to praise them, it forces you to look at their good qualities. Because if I want to praise somebody, I got to figure out something to praise. And you can't phonily, you can't, lie when you praise somebody, because they'll always know. If you look at somebody and say, you're really nice, like that, they can tell if it's true or not. In order to praise someone, it forces you to look at their good qualities. And in order to praise someone, it stops you from looking at their bad qualities. It prevents you from looking at their bad qualities. And people have bad qualities. The goal in life is to stop looking at them and to start looking at their good qualities. In order to look at their good qualities, if you have to praise them, you're going to have to find one. Now, it's very hard to not see someone's bad qualities if you focus on it. If someone has a bad quality, it's hard to not see it. Isn't that right? How do you not see something? When you don't want to see something, how do you not see it?
Look at something else.
Yes, you look at something else, exactly. Don't try to not look at it, because that doesn't work. For example, if I said, do not think of pink elephants. Whatever you do not think of pink elephants. Don't think of a pink trunk, and don't think of pink ears, okay? Don't think of it. Does that help? What does it do? It makes you think of it more, doesn't it? The only way that you can not think of pink elephants is have something else to think about. This is why with children, if they're doing one thing and you want to get their mind off it, you don't try to convince them, oh, it's not so bad or something. You just give them something else to distract them. Well, you have to distract yourself from people's bad qualities. And the way you distract yourself from their bad qualities is to think about their good qualities. And the best way to see someone's good qualities is to say, I have to praise that person. I have to praise them. So if you have to praise them, you're going to have to look for something to praise. Isn't that right? Which forces you to do this. Now, I want you to make it a goal to praise people today. Okay? That's it. Your goal is to praise people today. I'm not going to tell you, make it a goal to praise everybody you meet for the rest of your life. Of course, I do want you to do that, but the way in which you do that is to learn to praise people today. Because if I tell you to praise people for every day of your life, you won't praise anyone today, and then you won't praise anyone tomorrow and the next day. But if I tell you, learn to praise people today, now even if it is a very small thing, I want you to praise them. How are ways to praise people? What are some ways to praise people? Tell me a few things you could say to people that is praise to them. Tell me one. I'm sorry? Give them a compliment, which is praise. But what do you compliment them about?
Like you say, you're such a kind person.
Okay. So you mention a good quality of them and tell them that they're kind. Okay. I think that's a good way to praise someone, as long as it really is a good quality that you see in them. Like you see that they're kind, or they're happy, or they're good. Okay, so look for a good quality and compliment. What's another way to praise people?
Praise their action.
Praise their action. If they do something that is praiseworthy, you point it out and say, that's very good. What's another way to praise them? Yes? I'm sorry? Praise their intentions. Okay, yeah. You say, okay, yeah. I know you have some good intentions there. Yeah, that's good. Yes, I like that. How else can you praise somebody?
Thank them.
I'm sorry?
Thank them.
Thanking them. Yes, and that's the gratitude part. Praise and gratitude. You can thank them. Yes, how can you?
Listen to them.
That is a form of praise, because you're saying by your actions that what they have to say is important. Isn't that right? or that what they have to say is meaningful. That's a good way to praise them. How else can you praise them? Can you praise the way they look? If they're looking good or there's something like that, yes? You like their smile, yes. Yes, yes. I'll tell you, interesting, when I was growing up, I have a mother. My mother is of a certain nature and type that she talks to everybody. You know, it doesn't matter where she is, on the elevator, in the supermarket, in the line. She talks to everybody. When we were growing up, we always were embarrassed. We said, "Oh, Mother, stop that," you know, because she'd always smile, she'd always talk to everybody and be friendly to everybody, and she was always bringing everybody home. So you'd be at home, you know, and she'd come home and she'd have people with her and say, "Oh, I just met them in the supermarket," and stuff like that. She was always doing this. Her whole life she was like this. And for a long time, I couldn't understand how she did it. But she looks at someone very quickly and figures out what she can say that's praise. So she'll be in the elevator, and she'll look someone down, she says, "Those are nice shoes," you know, whatever, if they're nice shoes. And the person, "Oh, you like them? Yeah, you got them in France," or something, or she says, and she immediately blah, blah, blah. She always opens the conversation by thinking of saying something praiseworthy to the person, that they're praising them. And then she breaks the conversation, and then she smiles and talks. And we were embarrassed. We thought we were ashamed to go out with our mother because she was so nice to everybody. She always talked. She walked down the street, she'd smile at people as they walked past, and we were so embarrassed. And I think it took me a long time, I guess till I was about 50 years old, I suddenly realized everybody loves my mother and nobody loves me, you know. And finally I realized, well, maybe it's not so bad to praise people. Maybe it's a great way to break the ice. It's a great way to endear people to you. It's meaning you're focusing on them. So I want you to try this today. I want you to try praising people. Everybody in this room should praise somebody else that they see today, but genuinely. Okay, no phony praising. I don't want any phony, you know, false praises or something like that. So that means that in order for you to praise somebody, you're going to have to look at them hard and see something that is good in them. And the act of praise causes you to focus on a good quality. And when you focus on that good quality, you're mirroring it back to them, they're seeing them. It causes almost like an electric or a magnetic force. It's the power of love. Remember we said that love is a power? You are actually generating that power merely in the act of praise. And so I want you to do this today. And by the end of today, everybody should have been praised a couple of times. Okay? You should be praised a couple of times. And of course, you know that when they praise you, it's only because of the exercise, isn't that right? But don't worry. Forgive them, you know, and allow them to do that. Say thank you very much and so on. I know that you would have done it anyway. You were going to do it for sure anyway. And praise them back or praise somebody else. And you could think about this very carefully. Perhaps there's someone in this room who you have had a slightly cold relationship with in the past. You know, maybe you didn't quite get along in some shape or form. I want you to try and praise those people. You know, try and praise those people. Go out of your way to practice this important sign of love. And then you can move on to the other part of this particular sign of love, this third one, which is gratitude. To not only be able to point out a good quality of them, something good in them, but to say that you are grateful for that. The easiest way to show gratitude towards someone is to show them when you first see them that you're happy to see them. Okay, when you first meet somebody, you always know if they're happy to see you or not. If you go to someone and you knock on the door, they open, they look at their watch. You know how that feels? Have you ever met someone and you can tell at the first second you see them whether they're happy to see you or not? Is that right? That's the moment that you have to take control of in your life. Every time you see someone, you have to show that you're happy to see them. That's a form of gratitude, even though you don't say, well, I'm happy to see you. Of course, you could say that. And of course, but you say it, you have to say it not only with your words. You can't say, I'm happy to see you. You have to say, you know, I'm happy to see you, and you have to show it in your face. So these are the simple signs of love. You're going to have to practice them all this week. So this is the easy homework. I want you to go out today and praise people as much as you possibly can. You don't have to come up and praise me. Because I noticed in the last school, particularly in Sweden, they're very clever, the Swedes. You know, I gave them the homework, so everybody came up and they praised me on purpose, like too much. And I knew what they were doing. And I praised them for trying to do the homework, but try to do it on your other people, okay? Try to do it. You can praise me if you want, because believe it or not, we all like praise. You know, we all like praise. You don't want to build up someone's ego, but you want to be loving to people by focusing on their good qualities. And then we'll work in this tomorrow, the next day, on the other 9. Is it 9 so far? Because we've done, what are the first 3 so far? What are they? They're valuing unity over and above everything else. 2, acceptance and tolerance. And 3, praise and gratitude. And the other 9 are really exciting, of course, you know, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. Now, before I finish, I want to ask, how many of you are planning to sing in the choir this afternoon? You are? Oh, good. Yeah. Please come. I mean, at all the schools we go to, I like to teach music and singing. And some people think that the choir is only for people that are good singers or people that have sung in the choir before. But I don't mind. Whoever wants to come and sing. In other words, if you don't think you can sing very well, don't let that stop you from coming and singing with me, because that hasn't stopped most of the other Baha'is in the world from singing with you as well. You know, they all like to come and sing. So we're going to do that. What time this afternoon?
3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock, sharp. And I look forward, and we'll practice right here, right? 3 o'clock here. So I'm really looking forward to that. And also, I hope to meet all of you during the course of this week and continuing on the discussion of the 12 signs of love. Thank you. Nobody?
It weaves its life away, drop by drop, as it gives flame. You must die to the world, and so be born again, and enter to the kingdom of heaven. Look at me, follow me. As I am, Abdullah.
be content with showing friendship in words alone. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn, let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn, let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. Let your heart burn, let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path.